back to 757 Saturday Sports Talk. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel on Cova Sports TV, and you're always welcome to interact with us wherever you may be tuning in all across the globe. We now have a special guest with us. He is the college football expert and handicapper extraordinaire. You can find his website, Paul Stone Sports is the guy, and his website, again, is paulstonesports.org. He's also one you can follow on Twitter or X at Paul Stone Sports. Happy holidays, happy New Year, my friend. How you been?
Been well, guys. Good to be with you guys, and got a lot of bowl games coming up these next few days, and the playoffs, of course, resuming next Wednesday on New Year's Eve. So, really looking forward to it. I guess is it next Tuesday they resume? So, even sooner than I thought. So, really looking forward to it. A lot of good college football coming up.
As we get ready to turn the page to the college football playoff going on, and we got a game already in progress as we speak right now with UConn and UNC, a bunch today. Ed's going to talk about his Fighting Irish of Notre Dame with you here in a bit to break down one of their quarterfinal games coming up. But what do you make of the results we've had so far? There's been a lot of crazy finishes, comebacks, double overtimes, the 6 OT thriller with Toledo, Pittsburgh. Any couple of things, moments, games stick out for you so far, Paul?
Not too much. I think the games have picked up lately. The challenge is a spectator and as a sports bettor with the college football bowl games, obviously, is, who's in and who's out. So I think the quality of play maybe to this point has been slightly diluted based on some of the players who are in the transfer portal or who have elected to sit out to prepare for the NFL draft. But with that said, as we get deeper in the bowl season, we get to the more prominent bowls, and there's less and less of that. Case in point today, we've got Miami and Iowa State coming up later tonight in a game where both teams' rosters seem to be mostly intact. And the same can be said for Colorado and BYU. So we got two really good competitive games where, most hands should be on deck. So I think it only gets better from here. And, of course, as we've already, alluded to, the playoffs resume next week. So the next a month or so, 4 weeks between now and the national championship on January 20th, going to be a lot of good college football.
Yeah, and you've had some good insight on a number of these games, including one that I tailed with Navy beating Oklahoma there yesterday in a wild game where Oklahoma went for the 2, didn't get it at the end to Brent Venables' team as they fell under 500 for the season. You got one game or one team that you like most today on the docket here, Paul? I mean, there's a bunch of games that feel like they could go topsy-turvy either way. What do you think here as you look at the board?
Well, I'll tell you, that Iowa State Miami game a little bit later today, that's kind of a game that I've looked at, perhaps more than the others, and I actually like the underdog Iowa State plus the 3.5 and like the game to go over. The total has moved up to about 60.5 as we speak here on Saturday morning, the 28th. But, a lot of my recommendation, first of all, on the Cyclones, on Iowa State, is the fact that Miami, they entered the month of November ranked 4th nationally. So they controlled their own destiny. They were, right in the thick of it for a spot in the 12-team playoff, but they proceed to lose 2 of their final 3 regular season games. They fall to Georgia Tech on the road 28-23. Then they lose at Syracuse 42-38. So I'm seriously questioning, even though they've said Mario Cristobal said all the right things, they've got Cam Ward and most of their other top players expected to play tonight. But I'm still a little bit questioning how motivated will they be to play Iowa State on December 28th in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. So, that's kind of my main impetus for that selection. Iowa State, a good football team. They, too, came very close to making the playoff. As a matter of fact, if they would have won their last game in the Big 12 championship against Arizona State, they would have made the playoff, but they were dominated by the Sun Devils 45-19. But I think Iowa State, this is going to be a big game for them. I like the Cyclones plus 3.5. And then I like the over in this game as well. This game to me just screams scoring. Miami, the top scoring team in the nation, 43 points a game versus FBS opponents, 537 total yards offense per game, also leads the nation. So this is a prolific offense. They score, does Miami, 13.4 more points a game than their opposition allows. So they are a scoring machine. Not that great on defense, though. They've allowed an average of 32 points a game over their last 8. So I see lots of offensive fireworks. Again, seeing a total of 60.5. I think we're going to get up to maybe close to 70 in this game. I like it to go over.
As Andy Williams once sang, it's the most wonderful time of the year. It's bowl season, college football in full swing with the playoffs coming up here. Paul Stone, our guest here on 757 Saturday Sports Talk on Cova Sports TV. There you see the bracket with Ohio State taking on Oregon, Arizona State getting ready to take on Texas, Notre Dame playing Georgia, and Boise State set to play Penn State next week. Ed?
Paul, before I get to the playoff question about the playoff, the bowls. You know, back in the day as a kid, I loved the bowls. You come up, they had a lot of meaning to them. And then all of a sudden you started seeing more and more and more and more. First it was like 12, and then now it was like 30. Well, I think 38 right now, something of like along that lines. And I think with the football playoff series, to me, the bowls, except the ones they're using for the playoffs, have lost their luster. And then over the last few years, you've seen a ton of kids sit out. Especially at first, it was guys that were going to the pros, i.e. seniors, potential underclassmen who were going to enter. Now it's portal because they got to hurry up and go to their next college to get in before the signing where they got their chance for money. I heard somewhere earlier where the viewership for the bowl so far, before the big boys come up, is way down. And I'm wondering, are we going to see maybe in the future lesser bowls? Is there a way they can make players stay to play out the bowl? What do you have any perspective on the bowls themselves?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, you know, the main issue is the timing of the portal. You know, the early portal now starts in early December and ends in late December. The timing of it could not be worse. The late portal comes right at the conclusion of spring practice for most teams. So what they have to do, and it's been talked about, quite extensively by many others with a lot more intelligence on this matter than I have, but they've got to adjust the early portal. The portal cannot be right at the end of the regular season when many teams are playing in bowl games and other teams are even preparing for a chance at the national championship in the playoffs. So they've got to move that. And I don't know if they can do it through NIL agreements or how they can provide incentive. And it'll have to be financial incentive because you know what they say about money talks and other stuff doesn't talk. So it's got to be monetary, but they've got to incentivize players to stay to participate in these bowls, because if not, you know, they'll be wiped away off the slate. And I think they play an important role. You know, they give athletes, most of these guys not going to play in the NFL, gives them one more opportunity to put that uniform on, play a college football game against an opponent. But certainly the bowl games have been diluted to a pretty serious degree. And who would have known when the first opt-out of all time, Christian McCaffrey, who would have known when he started, how many ever years ago that was, when he chose not to play in the bowl game.
Was a trendsetter in a way that people didn't hope he would be, Ed?
Well, a piggyback question to that. How does one handicap? Vegas does it handicapping when you don't know. I guess you know before the game started who opted out, who's gone, because it seems like there's some big swings in the game. And you made a comment about how serious a team or players are going to take this particular bowl. And if they get down, it's like, okay, let's get it over with. But I've seen, I think was it yesterday, Texas Tech blew a 17-point lead. Somebody else blew a 21-point lead. These big swings.
A&M blew the lead. A&M,
yeah, these big swings. And how do you address all that in terms? Like I was trying to get into a pool with some friends in that, and they said, "Well, here, go pick the bowls." I said, "Wait a minute, how can I pick the bowls for end of December and January? At the beginning of December, I don't even know who's all going to be playing in the teams, and it's going to change the spread and whatever." How do you look at that?
Well, I tell you, during the regular season, my handicapping process is mostly what I would call and what's termed fundamental handicapping. You're looking at statistical, one team's rushing offense, for instance, against another team's rushing defense. How do they defend the run? Elements like that. But in the bowl season, it certainly becomes an informational handicap. And the information, again, is who's in and who's out, who's playing and who's not. So you have to use all your resources to try to get a feel for who's going to be playing in the game. So, I was able to get in front of a few of these won some, didn't win them all, and still have a few to come. But if you really work hard, I've always said chaos and confusion is the friend of the hardworking handicapper, and it certainly adds a layer to it. The fact that you don't know who's going to play, and not only a day or two before the game. I mean, like last night in the Texas Tech Arkansas game, Taj Brooks, who's Texas Tech's 1,500-yard rusher, he was listed as running back 1 on the Red Raiders' most recent depth chart. He didn't suit up. He didn't play. He's going to prepare for the NFL draft. And that's another maybe topic altogether. But even though we now have injury report requirements in some conferences, there's no punitive element and there's no definition of the terms. In the NFL, I believe this is correct, and I don't know exactly what the definitions are, but probable, questionable, doubtful, and out, they have definitions, and you're supposed to fall within those ranges. There's no punitive component at all for these coaches to be forthright in their information, and it's even more frustrating to me now than it's ever been because they're just playing with smoke and mirrors. They know there's no, what are you going to do to me? You're not going to do anything to me. So coaches are going to continue to present information in a way that they feel like is favorable to their side, to their position, which I don't blame them. I understand it, but it makes it very difficult from a handicapping and trying to figure out who's going to win these football games.
Yeah, I think Paul, those issues that Utah had with its quarterback, is he playing, is he not playing, for all those couple of years here under Kyle Whittingham, and now it's been like multiplied by 10 here with the college football bowls. But if you follow Paul's info and his intel, you've been winning more than 50% of the time the last several years, and his website where you can subscribe is available at paulstonesports.org. As we now dive into the college football playoff games with you, Paul, here, but we'll take them, I guess, in the top left corner to the bottom right corner. We'll start off with Ohio State, Oregon, and then we'll work our way to Texas, Arizona State before Ed will jump in with his Irish, his thoughts on them with Georgia and Boise, Penn State. Ohio State, Oregon, is this the best game on the board to you, A, and B, do you feel like it is the game that's most likely to be a shootout in the high 30s, maybe even the 40s?
Yeah, it certainly could be a shootout. I think obviously it's the marquee matchup. I would agree. I mean, Oregon's the number 1 team in the nation. They're 13-0. These two teams played arguably the top regular season game of the season so far. Oregon's 32-31 victory there at Alton Stadium in October that could have gone either way. So certainly there's a great deal of attractiveness to that game. And I could see it being high scoring. If Will Howard, Ohio State's quarterback, plays against Oregon like he played against Tennessee, the Buckeyes offense is capable of putting up big numbers. And then Dylan Gabriel, Oregon's quarterback, that guy's kind of a big game hunter. He kind of, he did obviously get some Heisman consideration, but he seems to really save his best for the big games. I saw him last year when he was with Oklahoma. He certainly didn't single-handedly defeat Texas, but without Gabriel, the Sooners would not have beaten the Longhorns last year in 2023. And then we saw his performance as well in the big game against Ohio State earlier this year. So that's a big game. You have to expect defense in the Notre Dame Georgia game there. To me, they're just all intriguing. They all have different elements. Arizona State. This is a team that won 3 games last year. Kenny Dillingham, their 34-year-old coach, now in his second year as head coach in Tempe, inherited an absolute mess from Herm Edwards. And in his second year, he has this team that was picked to finish dead last in the Big 12 in the Final 8, 3 victories away from a national championship. And I think a lot of people are maybe selling the Sun Devils a little bit short. I think that this is a team that's playing well. They're playing with a great deal of confidence. They've been money makers all year at the winning at the betting window. I believe they're now 10-2 against the spread. Maybe it's 11-2 even, but they've covered 6 straight by an average of 16 points. And I think they might give the Longhorns a little bit more than some people are anticipating. Penn State would appear on paper to have Boise State outclassed. But when I say that, in their last 25 times when cast as the betting underdog, Boise State 16-8-1 against the spread. And that includes almost beating Oregon in week 2 in Austin this year. So Boise State, you can't count them out either. I think there's 6 teams that could win the national championship out of the Final 8. I don't think Boise's going to win it. Arizona State could even be 7 because Arizona State's capable. So it's just a balanced field. And to me, it makes for a great level of excitement as we enter the quarterfinals next week.
Well, we know who Ed wants to win the whole thing as he rocks with his Notre Dame Fighting Irish time and time again, don't you?
Well, you know it, Paul. My Irish have got to win it. Assess that game. I know everybody's talking about Georgia without Beck. Makes it almost look like Notre Dame has a little bit of a breeze. I don't think so because Georgia has so many other players, and I think man for man, Georgia's more talented than Notre Dame. But yes, the most important position in all of sports, the quarterback, is big for Georgia. Does Georgia have enough to overcome that, or they're going to be fighting uphill all game?
Well, I'll tell you, like Circa Sportsbook in downtown Las Vegas, they kind of went rogue and they opened Notre Dame. When the matchups came out, they opened Notre Dame a 1-point favorite. I believe that's correct. And Georgia was quickly bet to about a point or a point and a half. So the sharp money, the sharp early money anyway, kind of likes Georgia in, based on that early move a couple of weeks ago. But, the $64,000 question is, how will Gunnar Stockton play? Georgia's backup quarterback who takes over for Carson Beck, who was injured at the end of the first half in the SEC championship game against Texas. And Gunnar Stockton, it's fair to say he hadn't played a whole lot of football. He is in his third season there with the Georgia Bulldogs. He was a highly touted recruit. People have been recruiting this kid since he was 12 or 13 years old. So he comes with a great pedigree, but still he hasn't played. He played a half against Texas, and Texas has a great defense. And now he has to go against another great defense in Notre Dame. So what it comes down to is, I think if Gunnar Stockton exceeds expectations, I agree with you. Georgia's roster, as good as Notre Dame is, Georgia's roster, man for man, is better if you take out the quarterback position. But how will Gunnar Stockton play? And even though he'll have the benefit of extra reps during practice, on the flip side, Notre Dame's veteran defensive coordinator, Al Golden, is going to have the benefit of extra time to prepare for Stockton, and he's going to try to confuse Stockton. There's going to be guys moving around, shuffling, and Stockton's not going to know whether he needs to change the formation, needs to change the play. Is that guy coming? Is he going to drop back into coverage? It's a lot of stuff he's not seen in real time in game action, certainly not in the quarterfinals of the national tournament. So it's just such an intriguing game and a great game. Not one of my favorite from a betting standpoint, because I could see either team winning this game. I actually took Notre Dame before the pairings were announced to win it at 12-1, just based on the odds. I thought they were a little bit long for a team playing as well as Notre Dame played at the end of the year in such a level field. So just a great game, and it'll be interesting to see how that one turns out.
Paul, the other question I have, let's go back over to Ohio State, Oregon. Oregon, number 1, undefeated, beat Ohio State. And yes, it was only 1-point game, but yet they're the underdog. Why? Why is the books do this? And it's happened throughout the year, that team with a better record or whatever all of a sudden comes in as the underdog.
So Ohio State is favored currently pretty much consensus by 2.5 over Oregon. They played at Autzen Stadium back in October. Home field, even though I think it's more at Autzen Stadium, home field is generally regarded and assigned about 3.5 points by those like myself who make numbers. So if Ohio State is -1, they lose by 1 at Oregon. Now they get the 3.5 points favor back for home field because they're playing on a neutral. That comes out to Ohio State -2.5. So there were a lot of other data points, a lot of other games that were played, but Ohio State, I think people, even though Oregon is 13-0, they've had some close calls. They've won 4 one-score games. And Ohio State, frankly, as big of a brand as Oregon is, with the Phil Knight influence in the last quarter of century or however long it's been that their program has risen to prominence, Ohio State's still a bigger brand. I mean, that is a massive brand, and I think they shade a little bit there. But it's always interesting, point spreads, and they're they sometimes cause folks confusion. But I think this one, based on that previous meeting, you have to, again, as a power rating guy, and I think this is fairly, not difficult to follow and not something really crazy out there. Ohio State losing by 1 point at Autzen Stadium, they get a higher power rating in that game than Oregon gets for winning by 1 point at home because you got that home field advantage. So Ohio State, as crazy as it sounds, because the goal is to win the game, Ohio State gets a higher power rating for their performance at Oregon against the Ducks than the Ducks get at home against the Buckeyes.
It's a great point. We'll get you on this one. Thank you so much for coming on the program. We look forward to talking to you in 2025. Again, check out his website, paulstonesports.org, for all the college football intel and handicapping info that he brings you all the time. All right, Paul, we put the bracket back up here. You got the best path. And I saw the hat there. You rocking the Texas. It's your home state. Who has the best path when it's all said and done to win the whole thing? I'm not sure that Texas will be my pick, but I kind of like their path the best because Ohio State, Oregon could duke it out. Notre Dame, Georgia could duke it out. What do you feel about? Who do you feel most comfortable about if you were to take a team at this point, 8 teams left to win the whole thing?
Like I said, Matthew, this is a year, and I think most people will probably agree with this. There's no historically great team in this field. We're not going to be talking even 10 years from now that, man, the 2024, team A or team B, that was one for the ages. So there's not a really great team, but there's so many really good ones, but they all have warts and blemishes. I was asked before the tournament started to help a person with a bracket, and hopefully if they do well, they'll give me a piece of the pie. But I picked Ohio State to win it all. I think, again, they're the most complete roster. Will Howard is the wild card. He's thrown 34 interceptions over his 5 years in college, has an interception rate of 3%, which is really it's above average for a college quarterback, much less a championship quarterback, level quarterback. So he's got to play clean football. But I think Ohio State, just forced to pick one team. We look at that bracket, and I know you guys have probably talked about it, but it really shows a flaw, and it's difficult. The committee had a difficult job. They're going to work some kinks out, and hopefully this thing will get better as it goes. But the fact that Oregon has to play, even though they did get a first-round bye, they get to play Ohio State in the quarterfinals, and Texas gets to play Arizona State. And Penn State gets to play Boise State, who are, fairly, even though they could win a football game or two in this tournament, they're the weakest 2 teams in the field, yet Oregon's got to play Ohio State. So that's not, that's not ideal. That's not the way that they wanted this to work out, I don't believe. But, again, it is wide open. I can see Notre Dame winning it. As I indicated, I've got a ticket on them. The winner of Ohio State, Oregon, would likely play Texas at Jerry's World in Arlington on January 10th. I mean, any of those 3 teams could win it. So, again, forced to choose one, I'm picking Ohio State. But if you would give me the field, the other 7 teams, I'd probably lay 2-1, put up 2 to win 1 and take the other 7 because it's just wide open. And I know a lot of people want some clarity. They want that just team that stands out, that's a great team. But I like it better this way because there's – I love the parity. I love the fact that these teams all on a given day could win it. And I think even though they're a long shot, I'm not discounting Arizona State's chances against Texas. They did lose their top receiver, 1,100-yard receiver, Jordan Tyson. He didn't play. He won't play the rest of the year probably. He didn't play in the Big 12 championship game against Iowa State, but they didn't miss a beat. They just drubbed the Cyclones, and they're playing with great confidence. And Kenny Dillingham's kind of just, he seems like old crafty, savvy veteran, even though he's a young guy. He's fun to follow. But those Sun Devils, they're not going to go into Atlanta and just simply lay down for the Longhorns.
No, Cam Scatterby was very good, just like Ashton Genty. And Ed's hoping that you cash that Notre Dame ticket, Paul. He hopes you cash it.
I'm going to take the pressure off you, Paul, as we bid adieu to you. Take the pressure off you. All I want from you, since you're good with numbers, is can I have the numbers for the $1 billion draw? I don't think anybody won it last night. So that's all I need. And I will guarantee you'll get more than a piece of that pie if I can get them numbers.
I wish I knew. I did. And it's been over 25 years ago, but the Texas Lottery had not been around a long time, and I never played it. but I played it because it was like $75 million. And I was a sports writer at the time working at a morning newspaper. And so you get off at like 1 o'clock, and I start looking at our early run newspaper. I'm looking on page 2, put the lottery number. I say, well, I got that one. I got that one. And I got 5 out of 6. So if I to get that 6 number, as much as I like you guys, we might not be talking right now.
We wouldn't be talking right now.
I wish I knew those numbers, Ed. I trust that you'd give me a little kickback.
Yeah.
Paul, I'm willing to share a great part of it. You're going to win it, and you won't even know who Ed Young is when you out in Aruba or wherever the heck you're going to be gone.
Well,
that would be nice. But what would the fun of it be, Ed, to have all that money and not have to go to work, not have to do anything? I kind of like being in the mix, being in the struggle.
I don't mind the struggle, but I wouldn't mind struggling with about $1 billion next to me in case I don't want to struggle no more. But Paul, thank you, man. We do appreciate you.
Hey, Happy New Year, Paul. Thank you as always. Great insight and perspective, and enjoy the bowl games and the playoff. And I'm sure we'll talk with you in 2025.
Go Irish.
Anytime, guys. Good luck, Notre Dame. Y'all take care. Good to be on with you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Paul.
That is the one and only Paul Stone, our guest here on Cova Sports TV. We'll wrap things up when we come back with the national champion, Bruce Pearl of the Virginia Beach Mustangs, not the one who